Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Yoga Mountain, and I'm sipping on some apple spiced tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you can find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, green oxide, Mars black, chrome yellow, fluorescent orange, and ultramarine blue. And of course you can switch up those colors as well if you'd like to. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which are Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 5 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our landscape. I'm going to be using my pencil. I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're just going to connect those markers. And by the time we're done, we'll have some nice basic shapes or sections that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring in process of painting. So I'm going to start by just giving myself a nice shape for the rock or the ledge that my yoga person and my tree are going to sit on. So I'm going to find myself about halfway left to right at the bottom of my canvas, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a marker right in through there. And then I'm going to come over to the right hand side of my canvas, and I'm going to come up almost about half or a quarter of the way. So if this is about halfway up or down my canvas, I'm about halfway between that and the bottom of my canvas. So somewhere in through here. Make myself another marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about almost straight over from that, maybe a little bit lower, so straight over from that and then down maybe a little bit. And I'm a little bit to the right of here. So this will be kind of the corner of the ledge for my rock. I'm going to connect these dots with just a nice kind of organic type of a shape. So maybe I'll kind of come down here a little bit and then maybe just give myself a little bit of a ripply type of a platform in through here. And then from here, I'm going to connect down to here with a nice kind of uneven type of ledge to my rock. So I can just bring it maybe down here, kick it out a little bit, bring it down a little bit more, and then just bring it over. Then I'm going to give myself a little bit of a bump for the essence of another piece of the rock, so something in through there. So that'll be the ledge that my yoga person stands on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some nice roly-poly hills in the background. So I'm going to, on the left-hand side of my canvas, I'm going to make myself another marker about a quarter of the way up, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to come down from that about 1.5 inches, make myself another marker. I'm going to go into my ledge in through here, make myself a marker, I would say almost halfway from top to the bottom, or 1/3 of the way, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to give myself another marker right in through here. And then I'm going to give myself one more marker right about in through here. We're going to connect these markers and we're going to add some extra stuff. Oh, maybe one more marker right in through here, something like that. So I'm going to connect these bottom two markers with a nice kind of, just again, organic kind of ripply type of wavy line. This is just going to be a nice hill in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this one. I'm going to make one more marker right about in through here. And I'm going to connect these two. This is going to be just another wavy kind of line. Maybe I dip this one down really far in through here and then maybe come back up just a little bit. And then I'm going to connect this one way over here to this one in through here. And of course, I'm just kind of freestyling this hilly range that I have, but you could certainly make yours into whatever you want it to be. You can kind of come close to this one if you want, and then maybe just bring this back up in through here. Again, you can really formulate this to be whatever you want this to be. And then in through here, I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to connect it to right about here. So I'm going to make myself just this additional little essence of one back in through here. And then once I've got that done, I'll probably step away from it, see if there's any adjusting I want to do. We're going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are blue, white, orange, and yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my sky a little bit darker up in through here with my blue, and then I'm going to kind of get it to go lighter and lighter as it comes down towards this bottom left. I want it to be the brightest, or insinuate that the sun is going up or down over in through here, so it kind of casts my highlights over on the left side of my objects that are over here. So I'm going to start up in the top right hand corner with blue and white, and I'm going to be applying this in kind of a left to right crisscross type of brush stroke with not a lot of paint, so I can kind of do a gradient as I come down, and I can incorporate these soft tones to my sky. So I'm going to start with about equal parts of blue and white on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to start up in this top right hand corner, and then I'm just going to kind of bring this over a little bit to the left so I can get this blue to be visible up here in the top left. I think I'm going to put a little bit more blue up in this top right hand corner. I want just a touch darker, so I just added a little bit more blue to the equation. And as I come down my sky, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start picking up more white, because what I in essence want to do is kind of work some of this blue off of my brush before I start picking up those additional colors, because the blue can really have sometimes an adverse effect when you're using those sunset sunrise colors. If you use blue with green or with yellow too quickly, you'll end up with a lot of green in your sky. So I like to let my colors blend together, but I do want to be cautious about the quantity of blue that's on my brush before I start picking up like yellows. So to prevent a green sky, the next color that I'm going to go into is orange. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange and white without washing my brush. And this will, if I do have blue left on my brush, which I inevitably will, and I kind of want to in order to get these colors to really blend well together. But if I had an exorbitant amount of blue on my brush, this would just kind of turn more of like a purpley type of look, which is safe. It's not going to turn it green. So that's where I like to go into the orange next as opposed to the yellow. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit further down this right hand side with my orange and white, so I can get some nice kind of orangey peachy tones within that sky. I may end up adding some extra little darker clouds as well. That's going to help to give my sky a lot of atmospheric dimension, but right now just kind of working this out and through here, and then I'll make any adjustments as I'm kind of fine tuning it at the end. So now I'm just picking up some more white as I am working my way towards this left-hand side. And with that, because I'm using this crisscross type of brush stroke, it's allowing me to get this nice soft kind of transition from one color to the next, allowing it to almost look like there's some nice light, maybe clouds floating by, without it looking too choppy and too sectional type of look. So now I feel safe to pick up some yellow and white. I'm gonna start getting some nice yellow and white going on down over in through here. I am gonna pick up a little bit of orange too in a second. Just wanna get this yellow started in through here, and I'm incorporating it and crossing it over into that orange. Now I'm gonna pick up a little bit of orange and white, and this is your sky. You can certainly make it into whatever dramatic type of appearance you want or subtle appearance you want. It's totally up to you. This is, maybe you want your colors to be really vibrant and really accentuated. So wherever your comfort zone is, feel free to explore that. I'm going to pick up some white as I'm going right down towards my pencil mark. If you bump into your pencil mark, that's awesome. I'd rather have you bump into and even cross over your pencil mark than to avoid painting that area. If you avoid painting that area, it's going to look like you have unpainted canvas, which you don't want to have. You want to have it all painted. So just, make sure that you paint over that edge. You'll still be able to see your pencil through it. I think I do want a couple of darker clouds over here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my orange and blue and just a itty bitty bit on my brush, just to give myself kind of the essence of these dark, morning clouds just kind of floating by in that atmosphere. Something like that will really help to sell the story of, dimension in your atmosphere. You can even pop in a couple, just delicately kind of floating through the sky down towards that horizon, maybe a little bit in through here. And then I would just kind of let this dry, see if there's anything else that I want to do to it. Maybe I make it a little bit lighter at that horizon, but I will let it dry. And then I'm going to be using this same large brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our mountains. So not the rock right here, but the mountains in the back. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, white, blue, green, yellow, and maybe some black and some orange. So I'm going to use all of my colors. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating some atmospheric dimension in my mountains by making them recede into the distance by using different colors. So what I mean by that is as land gets farther away from the viewer, we can see or detect less color in them. So they become muted and more soft looking. Our eyes have a more difficult time seeing warm colors like reds and yellows in distant land. So I'm going to be making my farthest one away having like a bluish tinge to it, and then as I creep my way towards this front mountain, this one's going to have more of a greenish tint to it, which will make it look like it's closer to the viewer. So I'm going to start with my back mountain and move my way towards the front one. What I'm going to in essence do is on every hill, I'm going to have them a little bit darker at the top and lighter as it goes down towards the bottom, just to give it like a morning kind of foggy haze down within those valleys. So I'm going to start over here. I'm never going to have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm just going to start with a very little bit of paint, and I'm going to be kind of rubbing it or scrubbing it into the canvas. I'm going to start it at the top, and then whatever color I choose at the top, I will just be adding a little bit of white as I come down towards the bottom of it. So this particular one, I'm going to start with a teeny bit of brown, blue, and white on my brush. So I have about equal parts of those three colors on my brush, maybe a touch more blue here, and I just wipe it off on my paper towel. So that'll ensure that I don't have much at all. And then I'm just kind of scooting it up towards the top of that hill, giving myself whatever kind of profile I want on that hill. And then I'm going to just kind of rub it down towards the base of that hill. and I hardly have any paint on my brush. Now I'm picking up a tiny bit more of white to get it to blend down into the base of that hill with a little bit of what will appear to be kind of a foggy essence to it. So something like that. So now when I move on to the next hill, I'm not going to be cleaning my brush because I wanted to kind of transition from far to close. So I still have blue, brown, and white on my brush, but now maybe I'd add a little bit more brown to the equation. So this will get the blue to go away and the brown will start to emerge a little bit more. So I've got the remnants of the previous hill plus a little bit more brown on my brush. And I'm just going to kind of scoot this towards the top. I'm hardly got any paint on my brush. I'm even feeling that I'm running out of paint at this point, which is totally fine for me. And then I just kind of start rubbing it down into the valley of that hill. And now I'm going to pick up a teeny tiny bit of white paint on my brush just to get it to finish blending towards the bottom of that hill. And you can blend it up. You can have dark spots and light spots. That's what's going to make it look a little bit more natural as opposed to just a flat color. So if you've got some little what appear to be peaks and valleys within that one particular hill, that's awesome. And then I'm going to move on to my next hill in through here. So now maybe, again, I'm not going to wash my brush, but I want it to look like it's coming a little bit closer to us. So now maybe I pick up brown plus a tiny bit of green on my brush. So brown plus a teeny tiny bit of green. And again, I just have a teeny tiny bit at the edge of my brush in through here. And I'm just going to scoot this up towards the top like this and then rub it down so I feel like I'm running out of paint. And then once I feel like I'm pretty much out of paint, I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint and get the bottom of that hill or that valley to look like it's got a little bit of foggy mistiness to it. Now for this one that's close up here, I'm going to start with green on my brush and a tiny bit of black, believe it or not, because I want it to be a little bit closer. So just a teeny tiny bit of green and black on my dirty brush. And again, I'm going to start up at the top, giving myself that darkness up towards the top, making that profile into whatever I want it to be, just bringing it towards that pencil mark. And then I'm just going to kind of rub this out. Now this is a kind of a bigger hill for me, so I can use a kind of a bigger, broader brush stroke, maybe with a little bit of a swirl to it or a rubbing in a circular direction. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my brush to get the bottom of that hill to, again, look like it's got a little bit of kind of fogginess to it. So now that I've got that, now I can go back and maybe add a little bit of glow from my morning sunrise. So I'm again not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of orange and yellow, just a itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush. And my sun I've got somewhere over here on the left side of my canvas. So I can just add these little hints of that morning glow or evening glow onto the tips of these hills. You can make yours really dramatic or really subtle. That'll be your call as to how dramatic you want those to be. But something like this can really connect the hills if you have them almost, very different in tonal value. You can utilize these type of effects with this twinkly highlight or the glow from the sun to connect them all together. And then you just fiddle with it until you feel like you've got it in the color range that you want. And we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, I just picked up a little bit more white on my brush. Once you've got this done, you can wash and dry, or actually put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our rock, the tree trunk, and the branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are brown and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a lot of brown on my rock surface at the top, and then I'll be using a little bit of black like towards the bottom of it, as well as in crevices where I feel like there would be some nice shadowed area. And then on the tree trunk, I'll use a lot of brown on the left-hand side and a little bit of brown on the right-hand side, because I feel my light source is to the left, so that would be a little bit brighter. I'm utilizing these colors so I can start the texture illusion of these objects. So I'm going to start with brown, a good amount of brown on my brush, and I'm going to start on my rock. So I'm using a very messy brush stroke, which will allow me to inherently get some light spots and dark spots throughout the surface of the rock. That will again help me to create this illusion of a surface or of an object that's got multiple kind of high spots and low spots without having to do too much work, because I know my brown is a little transparent. So the areas that I have a less paint, it's going to look lighter. The areas where I have more paint, it'll look darker. So that helps me to get that. And because I'm using a messy brush stroke, I'll get some areas to look like they've got a little bit more texture than others. And then I'm going to put a little bit on here. And with my dirty brush, I'm going to pick up some black paint. I'm going to go down towards this bottom right-hand corner of my rock. And I'm incorporating this black, and then maybe I'll pull it up in some spots to get it to blend in a little bit with that brown. And again, I'm thinking rock. I'm thinking it's got a lot of texture to it. I'm thinking down bottom might be in the shadows a little bit more. Maybe we put a little bit up top just to maybe show some, you know, shadowy areas of maybe some little dirt or, you know, grass or something at the top, maybe a little black in through here to show a little bit of a shadow behind this part of the rock. And then what I'm going to do, again, I just picked up a little bit more brown. I'm not going to wash my brush, but I'm going to move right onto the tree trunk itself. So I'm going to start, and again, we're going to do a second coat on this, so don't worry about it being perfect or not at this point. I'm going to pick up some brown. I'm going to kind of lay out where I want my tree to go. So I'm going to have it starting in this vicinity, and it's going to kind of bend over to the left as if it's kind of growing off or out of the rock. So I'm going to start with it really kind of wide at the bottom in through here. And I'm just kind of giving myself a little bit of an outline for the trunk right now, so I can have a game plan as I start to build the structure of it. So I've got it kind of coming out the rock and towards, you know, that left-hand side. And I think I'm going to have it kind of stretching out towards this right-hand side. I want my tree to be almost as tall as my canvas, but I want there to be kind of some little holes and stuff that you see through the leaves and stuff. So right now I'm just kind of planning out how far out I want this tree to go. So that's looking pretty good to me. Now I'm going to pick up more brown paint, and I'm really going to kind of give myself the full structure of this. I have remnants of black on my brush right now, so the black is kind of working its way off of my brush as I'm starting this process. And then if I'm just kind of working on this right hand side because I do see that I have quite a bit of black on my brush, which is great because this right hand side I want to be dark anyways. And now I'm just going to pick up some more brown to get this left hand side a little bit lighter than the right hand side. And now I'm going to just start to split and branch off my tree. I do like my branches to come pretty sturdy or wide right out of the trunk itself. They always, when I'm looking at the structure of trees, it always appears that the branches get thinner and thinner the farther away from the trunk that they go. So that's usually what I attempt to do, is I get them really wide at that trunk part, and then as I build my way out, that's where I will start to get them to go thinner and thinner. So I usually start right at that trunk and then build my way out. So in this instance, I think I'm going to build maybe one kind of fun one, kind of crooked in through there, like it grew one way and now it's kind of tipping the other way. And you can really have a ton of fun with your branches. They can be straight, they can be crooked, they can, you know, take on all different kinds of formations to it. This is loosely modeled off of these trees that I had seen one time on the edge of mountains. So there's lots of different regions of the world that have different types of varieties of trees that can grow off of the side of mountains like this, which are really cool. So, you know, you can either use your own imagination, or you can certainly model yours after real trees. So you know, find that zone that makes your painterly eye happy and just kind of roll with it. That's the beauty of painting, is you get to explore what you know, feeds your inner painter soul. So now that I've got that on there, I think I'm gonna put a little bit of black paint on my brush just to get this right hand side to go a little bit darker, maybe pull a little bit more darkness down here on the right hand side and on the right hand side of these branches as well. And then I would just kind of let it dry for a minute. I do know, again, that I will be doing a second coat on this, so I'm not terribly concerned about it being perfect, but I do definitely want to make sure that I have you know, some darkness on this right hand side, and that the main body of that trunk is where I want it. The interior branches, most of them are going to get covered by leaves and stuff like that, but I do like to have that internal structure, just so if there are little pockets of the branches that can see through, or pockets of the leaves that can see through the branches, that we've got the evidence of branches underneath them. So that's looking pretty good to me. I am going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to finish my rock, my tree trunk, and my branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are orange, white, probably a little bit of brown, and probably maybe a little bit of black too. But I will call them out as I use them. So really all I'm looking to do here is add a little bit of highlight to these objects so they look like they're being illuminated by the light source, as well as make sure that I've got them finished. So that would be if I see any little unpainted spots, that I can finesse those and make sure that they're finished. And if I want to add any more texture or details to them, I certainly will. So I'm going to start with my rock, and I'm going to start with orange paint on my brush. And again, I'm thinking rock. So I'm thinking this is really just got some lumps and bumps in it. And you can see as I'm doing this, I can paint this orange right over the brown, and my orange is transparent. So wherever I had light spots in the brown, the orange will look lighter. And wherever I had dark spots, it will look darker. So that's a beautiful thing about acrylic paint. If you get to know the brand that you're using, or you know, the transparency of certain colors, you can use that to your advantage as you're going through your painting process. So I've got some orange on there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown now, just to make sure that I've got everything, all my little spots painted in, and I did not wash my brush. So if I did have any little remnants of the orange on there, that will just work its way in. I'm using the brown at this point to just kind of fill in any unpainted spots and make sure that I've got as much detail painted on this rock as I want it to be. I just want to make sure that it looks finished and not partially painted. Now that I've got that on there, I'm picking up a tiny bit of white on my dirty brush. So this is going to help me to get even little extra little bright spots maybe on the edge of the ledge. So if I want there to look like there's kind of a flat spot at the top, I can pull a little highlighted area down a little bit. So that's going to give me kind of the illusion that there's a side ledge to this rock. And that just gives you that little bit of information. Maybe I put a tiny bit of a highlight on this little guy over in through here. So you can play with where you want those little top ledge spots to be just by putting a little bit of an extra highlight. I can even put the illusion of little grass pieces. So I just picked up a tiny bit of black paint, and if I wanted there to be, say, on this back side of the tree, or even on the front side, oops, I almost just dropped my water. If I wanted there to be the silhouette of little pieces of grass, I can just put little tiny black marks kind of coming up, and that gives you this cool illusion of there being some grass in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing for my tree trunk. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start with a little bit of orange paint and give myself this kind of messy, sporadic type of little highlight over on this left-hand side, maybe a little bit on this part of the trunk in through here, just again to give myself the idea that that light from the left is kind of glowing onto bits of this trunk. And again, just orange is where I'm starting, and then once I get the orange laid in the places that I want, I will start to, and you can do these little pops within the branches as well. Again, most of these branches are going to be hidden by the branch or the leaves, but just to start this off here. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown paint to make sure that my orange kind of transitions well into the dark side and that all the tree looks fully painted to me. So a little bit of brown is on my brush, and I've got some little kind of unfinished area back in through here, so I could use brown or black, but I'm just using brown on my brush right now. And then maybe this little spot up in through here, the little broken branch in through here. I like making little broken branches just kind of in the middle of spots. That looks good. And again, I'm not going to pay too much attention to those interior branches. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white on my dirty brush. Again, this is going to give me those extra bits of texture and highlight on some of those pieces of the tree. And I'm focusing it more on the left side of the tree, these highlights. You could certainly, you know, if you could even put your light source on the right hand side, and if you chose to do that, you could certainly switch up the sides of these highlights. So just knowing, you know, how the light would play on top of certain objects gives you the ability to just kind of tweak the direction of things and kind of mold it and bend it into the type of composition that you want. So that's looking pretty good to me in through there. I think I'm going to just bring just a little bit of this down in through here just to give this bottom part of the tree a little bit more shape, so just giving it a little bit more lightness. So that looks pretty good to me. We are going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can make any little adjustments that you want. I just picked up a tiny bit more black in order to get these little pieces of grass to do what I want them to. And then I'm going to put this brush away, take out my large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some leaves on the tree. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, green, yellow, white, and orange. And how I'm going to approach this is I'm going to paint the dark leaves first and work my way to the light. These leaves are going to be a lot of them are going to be very dark because they're almost silhouetted. I really am looking to do a nearly silhouetted tree with some glowing leaves kind of on the edges and almost backlit on the other side. But I'm going to start with my dark leaves first, and then we'll just work all the light leaves around it. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush. You don't need to overload it, just kind of a little bit on your brush, and that will go a long way. I'm going to start on the right side because I know that I want that to be the darkest. I'm going to be applying it in a dotting or stippling technique. And as I do this, I don't need a lot of paint because I kind of want it to dry quickly on the fly, so we can just add layers to layers, layers on top of layers, without having to wait or having to dry it. So as I do this, I am going to kind of dot it to make sure that it's kind of a thinner layer of paint. So what I mean by that is, again, I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and as I'm doing this, I'm consciously paying attention to it not clumping up too heavily. And I'm going to just kind of bring it over in through here. I can have little pockets of of leaves. You don't have to cover everything 100%. I'm gonna have, my edges are gonna be, this is gonna make some noise because I'm banging it. I'm gonna have uneven edges every now and again, making sure that I cover the tips of the branches, but I don't have to go just at the tips. So I will put some little pockets of darkness in through here. I'm reloading with a little bit more black just to make sure that I've got some good amount of paint in through here, but you can see I'm leaving some of those branches visible so that way we can see through some of it and I don't over paint it. I don't want to get rid of all of the structure of those branches that we've put in. As I get towards these edges, I am making sure that I'm not touching my canvas much. I'm really just lightly kind of tapping this so I can get these really just small little speckly marks, and those will work great as the undertone for the lighter leaves that I want, even though I am going to be, keeping this pretty darn dark. On this left-hand side, I'm going to have some lighter leaves showing up. And again, just really consciously attempting to not put too much paint. So there's very little bit on my brush right now. And then just kind of bringing this out wherever I want. Maybe I put some in through here. Of course, I just put it right on the branch that I thought was cool. That happens to me quite often. I'll paint a branch, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite branch. And then as I'm painting, it's like, oh man, I just painted over the branch that I thought was the best one of them all. But I'm sure that happens to you too. So once I've got this done, this is looking pretty good. Oh, and you can use this to hide branches you don't like. So if you have a branch in through here that's not your favorite, it's a great time to hide it. And so this is looking pretty good. I like mine to be kind of asymmetrical. So one side is going to be a little bit, thicker and shorter than the other, or maybe hangs down a little bit more. That's totally up to you. So now, without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up some green. So I have, the remnants of the black plus green on my brush, and this is where I'm going to start to just build the lighter leaves in the tree. But again, I want it to be nearly silhouetted, so I don't need to paint over all of this. I'm leaving a lot of that black showing, and this is just giving me that second layer, which is going to make them look a little bit more realistic. You could even use a little bit of brown in the equation if you wanted to, but I'm opting to right now just use green as my second tone. And again, I'm not using a lot of paint, so this is going to allow me to build this in a freestyle kind of way and on the fly without having to wait for it to dry in between. And as I'm going out towards these edges, you can pull those colors out just a little bit further past that original footprint, and that'll make them look a little bit more full and lively and have some more depth to them. And again, just kind of the trick is to not overpaint it. You can see I'm kind of just taking my time, finding my little spots where I want to put this lighter tone, but not overdoing it. And then once I've got this green on, what I'll do is I'm going to start adding a little bit lighter spots to give myself almost like a backlit kind of look to it. I might come back through with a little bit more darkness if I don't get it as dramatic as I want, but this is looking pretty good for me right now. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start adding in some bright little speckle marks from my sunrise or sunset colors. So this is going to be predominantly yellow and orange, but I may introduce a little bit of green to it or a little bit of white to it, but I'm going to start with yellow and orange on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to go around these edges, especially on this left-hand side of the tree. So this is, and in these little kind of peekaboo spots, this is going to make the tree look like it's being lit up on the other side. So you're in essence kind of backlighting it by doing it this way. You could have essentially built this tree from the other side, which would have meant you would have done the light leaves fully first and then just kind of built the dark on top of it to get to the dark areas on this side of the tree. But this way for me is a pretty simple way to do it, just kind of popping it in between the darker regions of the tree, and it gives it a pretty good effect. And as I'm going towards the right hand side, I'm still going to put a little bit, but I don't need to do it quite as much. So I still just have the yellow and orange on my brush, and maybe I just kind of pop it in on top of a couple of these tips, or maybe a little bit down in through here. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange and green to just kind of incorporate a little bit along these edges over in through here, just to kind of give it a little bit more substance. That's looking pretty good. I'm thinking I might want to do a little bit more black. So I just washed and dried my brush. I think I feel like I want a little bit darker in this interior of the tree. So I just picked up a little bit more black just to kind of make sure that I've got this kind of silhouetted enough. So I picked up a little bit more black, and I'm just kind of introducing just a little bit more in through here, maybe in through here. And again, that's one thing about this is, you know, as you're doing, especially a tree like this that is seemingly lit up from the other side, as it's drying, you might find that you want to add more darkness to it, or you want to add, you know, more information in your branches, or, you know, anything of that nature. So don't feel like if you didn't get it on the first pass that you can't keep tweaking it. That's, of course you can. You know, you can keep elevating it and making it have different intensities throughout the process. You just, you know, be mindful of just going slow at it and what you're looking to accomplish, and with that building process. And I'm digging this. I think I want a little bit of white or a little bit more highlight around these edges, so I'm just going to wash and dry my brush one more time, and I'm coming in with a little bit of yellow and white just to pop in a tiny bit more bright highlight around these little tips right in through here, because I want to make sure I've got as much drama as I want. So just a little bit of yellow and white right in through here. And then again, I would just wait for it to dry, see if there's any additional little marks that I want to make. And then we'll be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw an outline for our yoga person. I know I said I was going to use my small brush, but I decided I'm going to use my pencil instead. I think it would be an easier lesson for you guys to learn for drawing it with the pencil as opposed to drawing it with the paintbrush, which was my initial intent. So I'm going to guide you through a series, plus we can erase easier with the pencil than paint. So I'm going to guide you through a series of markers and basic shapes, and by the time we're done, we'll have something that we'll be able to color in during the painting process of our yoga person. So I am modeling mine after a female, but you could certainly model yours after a male. Just probably to do that, get rid of the chest that I'm going to draw and the ponytail, and it would miraculously look like a male, I think. So what I'm going to do is, this person's going to be pretty darn small in relationship to my scenery and my tree. So I'm going to have my person standing in through here, or in a yoga pose in here. So what I'm going to do from the corner of my my ledge is I'm going to come to the right about an inch, inch and a half, and then up about an inch, inch and a half. This is going to be right about the waist. This is about maybe a half of an inch wide, a quarter of an inch to a half of an inch wide. I'm making a rectangle. So I'm going to come up from here, maybe close to about another inch. I'm going to do the same kind of width, and then I'm going to just bring this down into a rectangle type of a shape. What I'm going to do from here is that's going to represent the torso. I'm going to put the legs on first. So how I'm going to do the legs is I'm going to split this in half right here. Going to give myself a vertical line. This is going to represent the split between the legs. So I'm going to do the left leg coming out here. The knee is going to come right about in through here. So this is going to come straight from here down at a little bit of an angle to here. In the crotch region, right about here, we're going to connect this to the knee in through here like this. That'll be the thigh. And then we're going to come straight down with the front part of the leg like this, maybe a little bit of a calf muscle like that down to the ankle. And then I'm going to just give myself a little essence of a foot. I don't need to do a perfect drawing right now, just giving myself somewhere to work from during the painting process. Same thing on here. This is going to be the right leg, going to be coming out like here. I want my knee, I think that's a little too wide. I want my knee to be about at the same distance, however this length is. So you can use any kind of measuring tool. My eraser weirdly is like the right length, like that. And then from that center area, that's about where my knee would be on this side. So just so you can get them kind of in the same size from one side to the other. And then her little calf is coming out like this, and then her foot, we can't really see her foot. Let me see if I've got a white pencil or something that I can show you. Here's a little white piece of chalk. So her foot is just going to be a little kind of mark down on here, which you'll be able to see when we paint. So that's all I'm going to do for that. I'm going to have her wearing shorts and stuff like that. So you could even bump out a little edge for the shorts like there, and maybe in through here, so that way you've got just little edges to the shorts like that. The next thing I'm going to do is put her head on. So this is going to represent maybe up by her collarbone shoulders. She's going to have a little neck in through here, and then her head's going to be a little bit of an oval type of shape like this. And when we go to paint, we'll put a little chin on and maybe a little nose, but you don't have to do that now. She's going to have a little ponytail coming off the back of her head. We're just looking to put that head in shape. And then the arms, what you can do is just kind of come straight out from that shoulder, even just give yourself a line. Think of it like a stick figure at this point. I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. When doing yoga, the pose like this, the arms should be level and like that. So then what I'm going to do, once I've got the length that I want, I can put the maybe elbow kind of almost halfway in through there, and just widen up the bicep area, widen up maybe the little forearm. I don't really need to do much to the hands. We can paint those in when we paint them. This, again, I'm just kind of giving myself what I want to do with the arms. So that's going to be her bicep. Maybe this is just her little forearm, and this maybe needs to be a little bit longer now that I'm seeing where those would make. And that's all I'm going to do for my outline. You can certainly, maybe a little chest over here, but again, these little bump outs, we can do that when we're painting as well. So I'm going to make any adjustments that I feel are necessary, but I think that's looking pretty good. And I'm going to use my small brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat of our yoga person. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using just black paint. I like to use black as my base coat for kind of silhouetted type of things, because it helps me to build those darker tones necessary during the painting process. So as I'm doing this, I am going to kind of follow my area that I've drawn out, but if there's any spots that I feel need little adjusting during this process, I certainly will do that. So I'm just going to start with her torso. I think I'm going to bump out a little piece for the bottom of her shirt. So again, that's going to just give me a little bit more information as I'm going through the painting process. So when I'm doing stuff like this, I do like to, if I am doing a silhouette like this, I like it to look as realistic as I can, and by just adding little things like a little bump for her chest or a little kick out for the bottom of her shirt, or maybe her maybe she's got a little belly. You can certainly just make it into whatever you want. You can, tweak this as long as you kind of understand what you want for the basic shape. You can make those little tiny modifications into whatever you want. As I go through this, and you could start at the head, you could start, whatever place that you want. Maybe in through here she's got a little bit more of a shoulder, as you know, she's nice and fit with her yoga exercises. And you can see I'm just kind of traveling slowly. I also have a little bit of water on my brush, so I'm getting these nice little clean lines with my paintbrush. I've got the back of her head in through here. I'm just going to kind of follow my pencil mark, and as I'm going through this process, that's just my oval in through there, but I know she needs a little tiny nose, maybe a little forehead, maybe a little chin, so I can take at the top of the head, just maybe bump that out a little bit, give her a tiny little nose, maybe a little tiny chin. If I wanted to put a mouth on her, I could certainly do that as well, just little tiny marks for the mouth, something like that. I can give her a fun ponytail off the back, or you could give her a bun. You could, you know, just make it into whatever you want. You know, again, yours doesn't have to be the same as mine. I'm gonna finish this little arm in through here. So again, just kind of this is her, maybe I'll just go straight out before I add the bumps for her wrist and stuff like that. And I've got her hand just kind of going like that. And again, if you do something where you're like, wow, that my brush got away from me, you can certainly just, you know, don't panic. Just leave it for a minute, let it dry, and then you can come back and, you know, maybe put some background color around it, or a little light highlight around the edge, and that'll help you to thin out a line. Sometimes if we panic during this process because our brush got away from us, or, you know, that line was too thick, or it went too crooked, there's no need to panic, because you can always just, you know, wait for it to dry, paint over it, you know, and make any little modifications that you need. It's, you know, that's the beauty of painting. You know, you can just make the adjustments as you need to. You know, if her arm is too long or too short, then I can adjust it, you know, and that's the way that it goes. And since I'm painting so close to this from a side angle, I might not get it right on the first shot. So that's, you know, I will definitely step away from this once it dries, see if her thumb's long enough, see if her arm is wide enough, and if it's not, then I'll correct it, or I'll adjust it. Same thing with her pants. Now that I've got them in place, I can just kind of get rid of those guidelines, just kind of paint these in through here. And you might find that you want to do a different yoga pose. If you want to do a different yoga pose, you know, like, I can't name them, maybe downward dog, that's one. Warrior, I think this one is some kind of warrior pose. You could certainly Google different silhouettes of yoga poses, and you could just trace on a different silhouette of a different pose if you wanted to, or you could attempt to draw it, using my stick figure kind of method of, figuring out where that waist is, and then just kind of putting a marker for that knee, and then just working out the little nuances of the body structure. As I'm coming down here, my brush just got away from me a little bit. I'm gonna just kind of bring this down a little bit more narrow on her ankle, give herself a little heel, and then just her little foot kind of coming out like this. And I can also just kind of hide stuff along the bottom. Maybe if a foot doesn't come out the way that I want, I can certainly put, some little wild grass around it. So again, those are the kind of things that, nobody needs to know exactly what, every single mark that I taught you. That you can certainly modify it to whatever works for you, or if you have, if it has on its own changed in different ways, you can certainly just roll with it. It all works out in the long run. So as I'm getting down towards here, I'm going to put a little bump for her ankle, because I feel like this would have a little bump, and then her foot is going to kind of just splay out like we're seeing the front part of it. And then this is looking pretty good to me. I am going to call it, but I will step away from it, look at it from a distance, and if there's any little adjusting I feel I need to make, I certainly will do that. But we're going to use this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got yours done, you can, like I wanted these pants to go out a little bit further. Once you've got yours done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our person. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are green, white, yellow, orange, and brown. And maybe a little black if I have to. So what I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom skin color that we'll be using on her arms, legs, and her face. I'm going to be having her wear green clothing. You could certainly have her wearing any color that you would like. So we'll be putting some green clothing on her, and she's going to have black hair. So I'm going to just do a couple little highlights on her hair. So I'm going to create my custom skin color, or I've already done it. I'm going to show you how to do it. So I have created a custom skin color in through here. What I did to get there was I used orange, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown, and white. And then I spun them together. You can certainly make, I actually need much more orange on that. You can certainly make any skin tone that you want. You could use make it lighter or darker, whatever works for you is totally fine. This will get darker as it is blending on top of the dark background that we have, but I'm utilizing it in that black on the underside in order to give me a nice shadowed or shaded kind of skin tone. So that's where I'm headed. Once you get to the color that you want, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint her skin on the left hand side predominantly, like on her legs, and then on her arms and her face. Her face is going to be the left hand side too, and then her arms I'm just going to give little kind of highlights with the skin tone. So I'm going to start on her legs. So I've got my skin tone in through here, and I'm thinking that where it's on the side of the on the left hand side, that's where I want to put it the most, and then I'll let it kind of fade into the black, which is on the dark side of the skin. So I love using this kind of approach to darker or in the shadow type of skin, because I can build these highlights so easy and make them so believable with that dark background, because I can just add these thin layers, and the thin layers tend to be transparent. So if I just start building these layers a little bit at a time, and every time I do it, I concentrate it a little bit more on that left side, what'll happen is it will naturally get lighter and lighter with each layer that I put on here. So I'm going to just kind of start gently with one layer, and it's a pretty thin layer. I'll move on to the other skin, and then I'll probably just come back and do another layer on here where I want it a little bit brighter. So I'm going to put this skin color just a little bit maybe up on this top side. I'm going to have her wearing kind of a sleeveless shirt. So I'm really just kind of lightly streaking in this skin color on here. And again, I know it's going to get darker as it dries, so I'm just playing with that undercoat right now, and allowing for myself just to have these the essence of skin tone right on top of that darkness. I'm going to do the same thing on her face. So I'm going to give a little bit on her nose. So just a little tiny touch on her nose, maybe a little bit on her cheek, coming in through here, maybe a little bit on her chin, maybe a little bit on her neck. So again, I'm hardly touching the canvas, just a little bit to give the essence of that skin tone. And then I can just go back to where I want, I can continue to layer it on that light side until it gets as light as I want. I will in a second probably pop a tiny bit of white to get an extra little highlight on this left-hand side. Even on the knee, maybe I'll put a little bit of extra brightness on the knee so that pops out just a little bit more. But like on a shin bone, maybe I'd add a little bit of extra in through there. So again, you can kind of tweak that brightness however much you want. And I'll do the same approach when I go to do the shirt. So when I do the shirt, if I want there to be brighter areas that pop out a little bit more, like on her chest, I'll do my paint, I'll make it thicker so you can't see through it as much. On her face, let's see, just a little pop in through there. I'm going to touch my brush in a tiny bit of white right now just to pop a little extra highlight on her knee, and maybe on this shin right in through here, maybe on her toe and through there. So those are just little kind of extra bits of highlights. And again, I'm using a real small brush with a real light touch in order to just get these little tiny highlights over on that side where I want, maybe a little bit down that shin. That's looking pretty good. I think I just wiped my brush off. I picked up a little bit more of that skin tone. I think I went a little light there, so I just brought back some of that skin tone. There we go, that looks pretty good. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start working on the clothing. So I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna pick up some green, and I'm gonna approach it in the same way. So I've got, I'm gonna put it heavier where I want it to be brighter. Maybe I've got a little bit of a collar in through there. And again, I know it's gonna get darker as it dries, so I'm just utilizing the opacity of it, or lack of opacity of it, to help me get it to pop out. So I put more paint where her chest is, so that's going to pop out a little bit more. More paint where her belly or the bottom of her shirt is, so that'll pop out more. Where I'm going to put her legs in through here, so maybe more paint at the top of it so it's a little bit brighter, maybe along the edge, and then as it kind of comes over here, maybe where this leg kind of goes to the right, I've put a little bit more in through there. So you can have fun with getting each of these pieces to kind of pop out a little bit more just based on the quantity of paint that you put on it. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit of white on my brush right now to give just an extra little bit of highlight on the chest or on this left-hand side, just again to speak to that light source a bit. So that was just a little bit of white on my dirty brush, just again to accentuate that left-hand side just a little bit more in through there. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to put some hair on. And her face, again, I'm not doing much because I don't need it to have a firm detail. On her hair, I'm going to use, I think I actually am going to use brown and white as my highlight colors. So a little bit of brown and white. I'm just going to put it kind of draping over this left hand, her left hand side of her face. So that way maybe it looks like it's covering her eye that I don't want to paint. You can certainly paint a little eye if you want to, but it's such small detail that I'm like, I think I'm going to skip the eye. So brown and white, just giving me this little kind of draping of the hair and pulling it up into the ponytail. And of course you could make as much detail as you want. I'm picking up a little bit more black to go down in this back side of the ponytail, and then fill with it as much as you want. And we are going to be using this small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of these little details in here, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm gonna go bottom right on this one. I'm using my small brush. I'm gonna use orange paint, and I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful, inspirational image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.